When the earnings crossed yesterday, literally my mouth just opened when I saw that 74.5 million iPhone number, blowing away the optimistic analyst estimates of 65. What an amazing quarter.
Yeah, there's no question about it, Corey. One of the data points that I kind of took away from the call yesterday is they sold, during the quarter, 34,000 iPhones an hour, every single hour during the quarter. That's just mind-boggling. And it really speaks to the tremendous quarter that Apple put up. The question, of course, is to what extent can they continue that momentum?
Yeah, I mean, I read an analyst note this morning that was actually saying, you know, the problem with this number is it's just too good. They can never do this again. And I thought that's just an insanely stupid way for Wall Street to look at something. I mean, I just feel like here is this company that was on death's door, you know, a decade ago, putting up one of the biggest quarters any company's ever had.
Yeah, or you can think about it even more recently over the last year or two. I think there were significant questions about the next generation of iPhone products and what other categories Apple would pursue. Now, there's no question that there have been some disappointments along the way, but yesterday was a pretty resounding indication that Apple is doing a lot of things right at this point.
So let's talk about the iPhone in particular. It looks like the 6 Plus sold a lot more than the 6. And that helped gross margins quite a bit because the margin on the bigger phone is bigger.
Yeah, so obviously they were asked about this, and they highlighted the fact that they didn't provide specifics related to the products in question. But I think it's fair to say that the iPhone 6 Plus sold a lot better than people anticipated, and that makes sense, right? Because they haven't had a so-called big screen phone in the market since really they started selling the iPhone in 2007. So there was really a big opportunity to kind of capture not only new smartphone consumers, but also those folks that have been with Android for who knows how long. That actually could have some pull-through potential for Apple for a number of quarters, if, of course, those folks are engaged, are using things like iTunes and the App Store, and end up building around that ecosystem.
And sales and marketing expenses were actually, as a percentage of revenues, were lower, and the sales and marketing expense didn't grow that much. Are we to make anything of this? They still spend a ton of money on it, but I wonder if that sort of meant maybe less advertising for Apple, but fantastic results.
Yeah, I think the way we look at it is, look, number one, they got better scale maybe from the sales and marketing, and that happens when you're talking about a huge company during holiday season. But also, I would agree with the notion that there are other ways that Apple can kind of make its brand and its products more visible on a regular basis to consumers. I think one thing to keep in mind is I think that they were looking to hire some folks and build a team around social, and I expect that to be much more of a focus, at least from a marketing perspective, for Apple in 2015.
Interesting. All right, let's turn to the iPad here. The iPad results were not great. They introduced a new product in the quarter, and yet sales fell year over year for the 4th quarter in a row.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, Corey, if there were any things to kind of highlight that were, I'd say, neutral and negative, you have to start with the iPad. And to be honest, there's no kind of mincing words. I mean, the results related to iPad were pretty bad. Look at the revenues, declining 22%. The ASPs were down.
Down to $419, yep.
Yep, and there weren't any indications from Apple that this is going to change anytime soon. Now, don't get me wrong. As you referenced, I mean, the iPhone is the company's most profitable product. So if you have a new iPhone 6 Plus cannibalizing sales of the iPad, well, all things considered, that isn't so bad given that you have a higher blended margin. And, of course, the iPhone has residual benefits in terms of long-term contracts and carrier relationships. But it is worrisome, and I don't think they have a quick fix for it.
And you know, $9 billion in sales in 13 weeks isn't too bad when it comes to the iPad. But it does make me wonder about the future of the tablet as a product line.
Yeah, I think that's a really kind of interesting thing to consider over the next number of quarters, right? Because I think at this point, people are probably taking a step back and realizing, you know what? The iPad probably isn't going to notably contribute to growth. And if anything, that makes Apple kind of more focused and reliant on the iPhone, which I think injects a new level of risk into the story. Look, A great quarter. I think people understandably are enthusiastic about what Apple delivered. But to be frank, the more and more reliance on the iPhone means that there's more risk when it comes to things like carrier subsidies, for example, and competition that might occur on the smartphone level that we really haven't seen as much of over the last year or two.
And the last point I want to bring up, Scott, is that the Macintosh sales, we've now seen 4 quarters in a row of year-over-year Macintosh sales accelerating and meaningfully. I think 14%, as I recall, year-over-year for the quarter they just reported, which is a nice boost.
There's no question that when you look at the quarter, sure, you lead with iPhone, but you know what? Not far behind is Mac. And you referenced that 14% revenue growth number. That's when the PC market, at best, is kind of flatlining here. So the fact that Mac is gaining share is really significant as well.